What's happening, everybody? It's your man, damednydc, host of the Two Mics Up podcast. Sitting here today, we're going to talk about something that, is very serious and sensitive. This season, I feel like I've been kind of spreading out and, expanding into areas of concern in our community that we really sometimes overlook, we don't talk about. Some of us may not acknowledge that some of these things still exist today. But today's guest, she's really going to sit down and really help navigate me and us and those of us that are watching and listening through, something, like I said, it's so sensitive that, we really want to eliminate this if we can, uh, not only in the Black and brown community, but in our society and our communities abroad. This is a really it covers across multi cultures, multi layers. And I think, our guest today is going to be able to help us to discuss that. And without further ado, Tiffany Santana, she is with Bethany House here in Northern Virginia. And Bethany, if you could just take a few moments to really introduce yourself to us and your role within Bethany House and what Bethany House is doing to help improve our community when it comes to domestic violence and abuse.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Tiffany Santana. I am the executive director at Bethany House of Northern Virginia. Bethany House is an organization that empowers women and children escaping domestic violence by providing safe, short-term housing and trauma-informed services to them. We're a 42-year-old organization, and although we're based right here in Northern Virginia, we accept women from all over the country, and in some cases from other countries. Our program is unique. Most of the domestic violence organizations in the region and across the country are jurisdictional. That means if you live in Alexandria City, you have to go to the Alexandria City domestic violence shelter. If you're not a resident of Alexandria, then typically you won't be accepted into Alexandria City services. Same for Fairfax County, same for Falls Church, Loudoun, Prince William. And so we are a privately funded non-jurisdictional organization, which means we can take women from everywhere. Awesome. And although we coordinate with all of the other localities, we are able to, we're not bound by jurisdictional limitations. We keep women in shelter who are escaping domestic violence and sometimes their children for 4 months. And during that time, they receive counseling, they receive life advancement programming, and that can be anything from job skills to language skills to childcare, resume building, parenting classes, anything that a woman needs to get onto her feet and to walk into independence and to be free from an abusive and controlling relationship. We personalize that for her and we try to make that happen for her. And then once she leaves us after 4 months, she can opt into a 2-year program that we call aftercare. Okay. And that program is unique. It's almost a one of its kind program where we stay with women for 2 years and they can continue to receive counseling. They can continue to receive the life advancement classes. They can continue to come to our pantry if they need pantry and personal items. And they can, we're a safety net. So if a woman is getting her life started and she gets her job and she runs on a hard time and she needs help with her rent, and help with rent assistance, just anything that will keep her stable and on her feet so that she doesn't have to go back. And awesome. We have found great success with that type of programming, with that more comprehensive programming. We're in the high 90th percentile for women who don't regress into domestic violence situations. And then another element is community service, which is why I talk to you and other people, is really to get the word out, to educate the public about domestic violence, but also to partner. Because we're privately funded, we don't have always all the monetary resources to do exactly what we need to do. So our partners, our community partners, help us out tremendously with providing services to the women.
Man, Tiffany, that's awesome. And first of all, it's my honor and privilege to have you here on the show and really sharing your message because like, we sit here on Tuesday nights and we have, our team meetings and we talk about things um, that we feel for our platform can really help others in the community. And we came across, Bethany House and just the story behind it. It's amazing and it really talks to, like I said, things on a level that I think many of us just kind of turn a blind eye to.
Mhm.
And we wanted to highlight this. And I really want to start by asking, not to be or sound ignorant, but I want to ask, can you educate us on domestic violence? And really, like, are there varying types of, domestic violence that maybe you come across more commonly than others? Or are there some that we really don't even really even know maybe exist?
That's an excellent question. And so many of us are ignorant about domestic
Mm.
violence. I was in an abusive and
Oh,
controlling
wow.
relationship and
Wow.
didn't realize I was in it until I was
Wow.
out.
Wow.
So a lot of times we don't recognize what abuse and control are.
Mhm.
A lot of times we think of domestic violence as just physical violence,
Right.
but it's so much more expansive than that. Physical violence is one component,
Mhm.
but we also see social emotional violence and
Mhm.
control. We
Mhm.
see financial abuse where
Yeah.
someone will control someone by controlling the finances. If
Mhm.
you're not able to access money, then you can't shop for yourself. You can't buy things for yourself. You can't pick up and leave anytime you want to.
Wow.
So we see financial abuse. We see spiritual abuse. And that's something that we rarely talk about.
Mhm.
And that's when someone takes a particular religion and distorts it in order
Mm.
to level control over someone. And a
Gotcha.
lot of the major religions, there are questions about gender roles and about, submissiveness and who gets to run this and who gets to run that. And some people will take advantage of that,
Mhm.
and take advantage of people's misunderstanding of a particular religion, and
Mhm.
they'll use that to control a person. Sexual violence, obviously, some people don't believe that within the confines of a marriage that someone could be raped.
Yeah.
But sexual violence is a serious issue that we
Mhm.
see often. Abuse can make itself manifest in so
So
many
many
different
ways.
ways. And we deal with women who come to us from all of those abuse backgrounds. We don't just simply take women who are physically violent or in physical danger, because we know the trauma of emotional abuse can
Mhm.
be just as damaging
Yeah.
to a woman and her children
Yeah.
as physical violence. So
Yeah.
we deal with violence of all kinds,
Mhm.
and provide services to women who come to us.
Mm.
And from all different backgrounds of domestic violence.
So I'm listening and I heard, when you say gender roles, and I wanted to also ask, I don't know why this and sparked a question in my mind of even same, you're dealing with women, but let's say same sex marriages.
Mhm.
Do you find that there's abuse also within same sex marriages?
There is abuse. Abuse does not discriminate.
Oh, okay.
Um, People do, unfortunately, but
Mm-hmm.
abuse does not.
Mm-hmm.
So we find that people are abused in same-sex marriages and heterosexual relationships. We find that people are abused in any socioeconomic status.
Mm-hmm.
We've had women who've come to us who are professors, tenured professors, and
Wow.
very well established in their fields.
Right.
And they go home every day and they get beaten up.
Wow.
We have women who come off the street who
Mm-hmm.
are in relationships, because a lot of times we don't think about people who are married and
Yep.
homeless.
Yep.
And so we have women who come to us from their cars,
Wow.
who are abused. We have women of all different races,
Mm.
all different backgrounds who come to us, people who come to us from Morocco and Russia, and who are African American and who are Asian and Latina, and
Wow.
who are white. And so it's just something that is pervasive across cultures and across socioeconomic status. And so, we're doing a lot of the work to try to connect with as many cultural groups and social groups and socioeconomic groups as we can, because we know that we can find domestic violence in any of those places.
Mm. And that's why I said, because like I said when I started, I just think sometimes we just kind of overlook. Because, like you said, when you're looking from the outside, like I said, you probably wouldn't think that Damon the professional or Tiffany the professional is experiencing something like that. And I think sometimes we have a misnomer that those of us, like you said, on a less than socio-economic path may be more avert or open to or have this happen to them. And that's why I just wanted to try to clarify and really throw that out there so we get a clear picture that this, like you said, this covers all walks of life, no matter
And
where you are.
Not just women.
Right.
One in 4 women will experience some sort of violence in her lifetime. 1 in 9 men.
Wow.
That's a lot of men.
That's a lot of men. Yeah.
A lot of men. And so unfortunately, we're not at the position where we can care for men who are escaping domestic violence. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of services. I think there are 6 shelters in the whole United States that deal with men. So our goal is to expand to care for men as well, because we don't want anybody to experience violence and control. And we want men to know that it's okay. You're not less of a man because you're experiencing abuse.
Right.
And I think society will say that, that, you're less of a man because you're being traumatized by another partner. But, we know that that's not the truth. And we want to be able to provide resources for men eventually as well.
I'm glad that you brought that up as well. And like I said, to broaden the scope, because we do. And yes, you're right. I didn't 1 in 9. That's really a lot more than we even recognize, even on that number. Absolutely. But I want to then really kind of shift for a second then, because in these relationships, are there any warning signs that maybe people should pay attention to? And it's really like a 2-part question, and then really more importantly, maybe can you share what steps, a suspected victim or someone who's being victimized should do in terms of abuse, and where they should go or what they should do?
Those are great questions. So domestic violence specifically and intimate partner violence on a more broad scale it has everything to do with control. So wherever you see varying levels of one person trying to control another, then those are going to be some of your red flag areas. I had a friend of mine that every time we were together, she was checking her watch. She was checking her watch to make sure that she would get home in time. Because if she didn't get home in time, that was a problem. Wow. She was going to get something on the back end. So things like that, where, a person may be dealing with someone who's extremely jealous, who puts them down, who minimizes and demeans them. Those are things that we see that are violent. And again, although those things don't look physically violent, they're emotionally violent. Yeah. Anytime that you try to control or bend the will of another person, that is violence. And so those are some of the red flag things. Obviously, if you see bruises on people and people have difficulty explaining what those bruises are, if your cousin always is clumsy, right, and she this week she's got a cast on, next week she's got a boot on, and next week she's got a black eye because she fell. Right. Those are some more common signs of physical violence. Right. But some of those fearful behaviors, those behaviors where someone's being controlled or demeaned, or someone is experiencing some extreme jealousy, those are signs. Right. And we can't take them lightly. Domestic violence, unfortunately, escalates almost always, sometimes even to homicide. Wow. More often than not. And so when you see people experiencing those signs, or like I told you, I was in a relationship that was abusive. I didn't realize it because I didn't know the signs, because I had no exposure to abuse, coming up. Right. When you start to see someone who's angry and who can't control their temper, that's going to escalate over time. Right. And it escalates in every area. So if they're being violent at home, they're probably being violent on the job in some way. Yeah. So being aware of those things, and then ways that you can get out yourself, or you can help other people. I'll start with helping other people first, because that's probably the trickiest. Right. You have to remember that when someone is in an abusive, controlling relationship, they typically believe that they love the other person, and they may have genuine, deep affection and ties to the person that's abusing them.
Okay.
So their natural bent is always going to be to defend.
Right.
And you have to be okay with that.
Okay.
Don't judge them for defending someone who's beating them. Don't judge them for defending someone who's mistreating them. Approach them with a more of an attitude that you're there for them. I'm here for you. I need you to know that I'm a safe place. I need you to know that I know that you're going through some things and I'm not judging you and I'm here to help you.
Okay.
And one trick my mom used to use with me back in the day that works really well is asking questions, posing questions for people to think about on their own. Do you feel safe? Do you think it's okay to not feel safe at home? Not judgment. I just want to know like what your experience is.
It's an open-ended question. This kind of
make you
think on what's going
on. Absolutely. Do you think it's okay that when you get home at night, you're tense and you can't really relax? Is that a safe way for you to live? I care about you and I want you to be at peace. Is that okay for you?
Right.
Sometimes just asking those questions. And if they're ready, or if they appear that they're ready to get out, let them know that you'll help them to work out a safety plan.
Okay.
A safety plan is super important. If you happen to leave, wear your clothes. Are you going to take anything with you? Wear your important papers.
Right.
Keep those things somewhere because people will control you with your documents.
Okay.
So do you have your social security card somewhere that you can get to it? Do you have your passport or your driver's license somewhere where it's safe? Do you want me to take it for you while you're making your way out? And then let's work on places that you can go. If you need somewhere to go immediately while you figure out your next steps, perhaps you as a friend could provide that, 2 or 3 weeks or 3 or 4 nights to give that person some reprieve.
Right.
But those are just some ways. It's really important to be understanding of that person, to not judge them and to not talk bad of the other person that they're in the relationship in, because they will defend.
They will defend automatically.
They will. It's just their way.
Wow.
If you're in a relationship that's abusive and you're ready to get out, the first place I always direct people is to the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
Okay.
I don't have the number off the head. I should have it memorized because they refer people to us all the time, but you can Google it. They're out there. The reason why I direct people there is because they are a hub for almost all of the domestic violence organizations in the entire country and some internationally. We recently had a woman come to us from another state, and she found us through the hotline.
Okay.
And so they're the hub. They can give you resources of every kind, whether you just want some counseling for now and you haven't made a decision to leave, or whether I got to get out now. Where's the safest place for me to go? Okay. They have those resources available. But the best thing you can do if you're in a controlling relationship is to get out. Because like I said before, it will escalate. And if it doesn't escalate to homicide, it can escalate to something nearly as awful. And so don't think it's going to get better. Don't think you're going to love them through it. That doesn't exist. You really have to make plans to get out and get yourself safe.
So if you don't mind, because Tiffany, I mean, first of all, those of you who are watching today or listening, I hope you're taking notes and taking down this information, because this can be, for lack of better words, for some of you who may be in a very physical situation, this could be life-saving information. And I'm really hoping that, you can take this information and do something with it. Those of you who may be aware of friends or family in this situation, please take down the information that's being shared today. And maybe if you're not sure, reach out to Tiffany for more information to get your family help. I say all of that to say, Tiffany, you mentioned something, your own personal history. And if you don't mind, can you share some of that history and really, what was it for you, or what was that moment that said, I can't do this anymore?
Yes, I don't mind sharing it all. It's a great question. So I was in college and I wasn't married to this person, thank God. I was in college and I was dating this young man. And like I said, I grew up in a very loving, warm, amazing household. I had a great childhood. I did not have much experience seeing abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I had a sister who battled mental illness, and I was very aware and conscious of the difficulties of someone living life with mental illness, but I had never seen domestic violence or abuse or control. And so I was naive in a lot of ways about what that looked like. I knew what it would look like if someone was being beaten,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't understand that there were other ways that people could abuse and control you. So I dated a gentleman for a while, and it was subtle, you know, little by little. We were great in the beginning. He was very nice, took me out on dates, very complimentary. We connected on a really personal level, emotionally and intellectually. And over time, just little nuggets. I'm going out with my friends. No, I don't think you should go out with your friends. I think you should stay here with me. Or if you go out, I'm going to go out with you with my guys, and we're going to hang out together. Then it was, you know, you don't need to go to class, you know, hang out with me. He was in the Navy. Hang out with me. You don't have to go to class today. You know, you can hang out with me. You're not going to miss anything.
Right.
Over time, what I realized in retrospect was that he didn't want me to advance further than him, because that would mean that I would need him. Right. And that would mean that I could exit. I also knew that there were traumas from his childhood that he had not dealt with. His father was an alcoholic and was abusive. His mother died at a young age. Wow. Me being naive and a helper, I thought I was going to love him through it.
And you're gonna help fix the problem.
Right. I'm going to fix him. I'm here for you. I'm just going to love you until you get all that worked out. That doesn't work. He had a very impulsive temper. And so the thing that two things made me decide that this wasn't going to work. Three things. The first thing was, as our relationship progressed, I was going out with some of my girlfriends one night, and it was back in the 90s. On Thursdays, we go to the club after Living Single came on TV. And one night I said, I'm going to the club with my girlfriends. And he's like, you're not going. And I said, no, I'm going to go. And he said, if you go, I'll kill you.
Oh, wow.
And I was not afraid. I was infuriated. And so I went, and I said, I guess we'll have to figure out what goes. And he showed up there. Wow. He showed up at the club with his friends. He didn't do anything. He's just watching. But that was the first thing. Like, you know, someone who loves me is not going to threaten to kill me. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. The second thing was, I had met a friend at work. It was a male friend. It was platonic, but he was going out to sea, and his birthday was in May. Mine is in August. And he gave me a birthday gift on his birthday because he was going to be out to sea. And I was like, that's a really kind, thoughtful thing for someone to do. Why isn't the person that I'm with doing that kind and thoughtful? So that was the second thing. The third thing was, we got into an argument, and I don't even know what it was about because I'm not an arguer. I'm very laid back and very mellow, so I don't get animated and hyped up. And he threw a bottle of cologne at me. It was a brand new bottle, and it shattered all over the floor. And I finally thought, if you can throw something in my direction that could potentially hurt me, if you could not have any regard for the fact that you just spent all this money on this thing, and you don't have enough control to stop yourself from breaking it because you're angry at something, what will you do to me? I knew even then, before I knew all the things, that was going to escalate. Eventually that would be my head. Or eventually that'd be a fist to my face. And I said, it's time to go. But after that, when we broke up, the second level happens, and this happens to a lot of people also: stalking. He started to show up places where I was. Absolutely. Started to show up places where I was, started to come on my job, called me nonstop. Crazy. I don't know how he even kept his job in the Navy. He might have gotten kicked out. I don't know. But that's another layer. Once people make a decision to leave, that infuriates the abuser. So we have to put a lot of protection in place to protect people once they're bold enough to leave. And so having that knowledge in my pocket now for what I do, and I thank God for how he takes you through life to pick up things that you'll need along the way. But it really informs how I do my work. and it makes me empathetic. It helps me to think about some layers of things that maybe other people wouldn't think about. And it really helps me to understand how to talk to people and encourage them to make a decision, because I really thought I was in love, and I really thought, that I could fix them, and that's just not the case.
And I think so many in relationships think that that's the case. You think you're in love, you feel like you're in love, and this person, okay, they've had some shortcomings, and I can fix them, and that the whole thing turns left.
And because there are good days, there are great days where everything's fine and it's beautiful and he really does love me, and then every fourth day, it's that
but you want to hold on to the hope of that good day being outweighing the bad days, and it just doesn't happen after a while.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and I want to ask then, because I really, I heard you mention some of the services. So the services that were designed, one sound like they come from a personal space. But what other services are there then that, let's say, someone coming can receive? Because I know you talked about aftercare and all, I really want to jump in and have you talk about some more of the services. Because like I said, if one person today is listening to this and can help someone else turn themselves around or get out of a violent situation, then in my heart, I believe we've achieved our purpose of having this conversation. So could you just talk a little bit more about the services that people can get through Bethany House?
Sure. So I started this role in January of this year. After being a volunteer for almost 8 years. I've really been passionate about this organization for a long time. And one of my goals, our vision is to eliminate domestic violence one family at a time. And I feel really passionate about if we're going to really work toward eliminating domestic violence one family at a time, we have to do a lot more outreach. And so this year we've implemented community support groups, and anyone can join them. They don't necessarily have to be in our shelter. They don't necessarily have to be victims of domestic violence, because we know that sometimes people become abusers or take abuse because of other symptoms, because of other things, whether it's not having boundaries or whether it's having a lack of anger management. And we want to deal with some of those issues too, because if you can deal with some root problems, then maybe those root problems won't damage relationships. So we provide community support groups as an outreach. We do quite a bit, like I said, of going out to the community and doing some education within the community, whether it's at churches or in sororities and fraternities, because that's a huge problem on college campuses is sexual violence and assault. And so we offer things like that. We are also very networked with the county and the other localities. We're based in Fairfax County. So we work very closely with the Domestic Violence Action Center with Fairfax County, which is also another hub for a lot of different resources, whether it's counseling or shelter. They're kind of a hub that will get people the right services that they need at any given time. And almost all of the localities have a hub like that, like Domestic Violence Action Center. So those are just some of the things, some of the resources. If you can get to those hubs in your locality, and all you really have to do is Google domestic violence services in whatever locality. And usually the first thing that will come up is whatever government agency is responsible for that. That's going to be your hub that gets you the types of resources you need, whether it's counseling or whether it's emergency shelter or more permanent shelter programming, or even whether it's court-ordered remediation, because sometimes after court, men and women or abusers and those abused are ordered to go to some kind of counseling or some kind of services. So you can find that information in those places like DVAC as well.
Thank you, because I think, again, a lot of us don't know where to even begin to go look. Some of us, like I said, maybe experiencing friends or family who are dealing with it and don't know how to lead the charge on their behalf. So this information is really helpful. I do want to ask too, just out of curiosity, with the pandemic and everything that's taken place and it's kind of been ravaging across the world, um, what has your experience been like? Like has there been like a peak or uptick? Because now so many of us have really had to basically knuckle down and be at home together. So just out of curiosity, has the pandemic really created a surge maybe in domestic violence?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes. Short answer, yes. We recently, our fiscal year runs from June to July. So we
okay.
always get a chance to look at the data from the year before. And our helpline calls almost doubled just in the last fiscal year. And
Wow.
the last fiscal year was the chunk of time where people really were on lockdown and there wasn't much activity. And we know that good relationships struggled during
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
lockdown. So
Yeah.
you can imagine what happens in an already volatile relationship.
Mm,
So we did see an uptick for calls. It did make us change some of our approach, even from a very practical standpoint. When we took women in, we had to quarantine them in hotel rooms for 10 days before we could bring them all the way into the shelter. We had to make sure once vaccines were available that the women were vaccinated before they came in, or could find a way to get vaccinated,
mm-hmm.
or we'd have to, keep them in a hotel room through their vaccination period, then bring them into the house.
Right.
So there's so many ways that this pandemic has made it more challenging for us to give services, but it's also expanded our capacity to think about how we can serve people through all seasons, no
Mm,
matter what happens.
mm-hmm.
We have aligned some of our policies with these odd, once in a lifetime occurrences. Who knows if we'll ever go through this again? I don't know, but now we know how to prepare.
Right.
We know some questions to ask and some ways to alter our services and to be ready for that. Because we want to make sure that we help people. We know that the abuses won't stop just
Mm.
because there's a pandemic. And we want to be ready in every situation to continue to be able to provide services.
Man, that's awesome. Not awesome that the uptick, but it's really helped you evolve. Like you said, to encompass all seasons and
Absolutely.
some of the unexpected things that now we're facing that we honestly probably never thought in our lifetime we would be living through a pandemic, but here it is, and it looks like it may not be going away anytime soon. So you have evolved and been able to pivot positively,
Yes.
to continue to help those in need, with this crisis, really, that we don't talk about a lot. And Tiffany, you had mentioned something too early on that I wanted to kind of fall back because there is basically an after, you know, as women transition. Can you touch on that a little bit more? And what kind of feedback have you gotten, or can you share, maybe a success story, or a story that is still in the fight, to transition out, because I think we need to hear about that too.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite stories is one I just came across recently. And there's a lady who came through our shelter. Her name is Misty.
Okay.
And she came through our program probably in 2011 or 2012. And she stayed for the 4 months. She did the aftercare. While she was in aftercare, she met her now best friend and was able to recognize that that friend was also going through domestic violence. Wow. Because what she had learned in Bethany House. Mm-hmm. So fast forward, 10 years later, the two of them remain friends. They both were passionate about domestic violence because they had been survivors. Mm-hmm. And Misty, when she came to us, back then we were full and she had to stay in a hotel room until we were able to bring her all the way in. Okay. So with that in mind, she started her own nonprofit, the two of them, that serves domestic violence victims, and it's called Pact Project. And their number one goal is helping women to get out quickly. Because sometimes you're in a position where your abusive spouse is always around, always lurking, not offering you a lot of opportunity to have freedom even within your house. And when a woman gets an opportunity to go, we need to be ready to receive her and take her. So that's what they do. They provide these backpacks that have in them hotel stays and a cell phone, a new cell phone, clothes, personal items, all of that. We actually have started to partner with them. And they've helped us on a couple of occasions to get women out quickly and to house them in a hotel for a few days until we can get our shelter together for them. And so it's just an example, and I love it, of how you can come through a difficulty and how you can come out on the other side, but then you can go reach back and bring more women. And they're doing a tremendous work. Like I said, they've been a valuable resource for us. So that's just one of many success stories that we've been able to see over the years. But that one's the most fresh because, we actually have been in communication quite a bit, and we did a video recently that she was able to tell her story, and she was our client speaker this year at our gala. So awesome. She's really turning her adversity into advocacy. And that's just really spectacular. That really blesses my heart.
That is awesome. That is an awesome story. Thank you, for sharing that. I got a little chill. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Like I said, turning your adversity into success and advocating for others, because you come from that background and that experience as well. Kudos, and to the whole story, to you, to them. May they continue to strive. May you continue to strive for the stars and continue the work that you're doing in the community. Before we close out, I do want to ask, what can our community, what can those who are watching this or listening to this today, what can they do to help continue to support Bethany House and its much needed programs?
The number one thing that I'll tell you that we need is money. Okay. I'm never shy about asking. And let me tell you why. We live in, like I said, we're based in Fairfax County. Our headquarters, our office is in Fairfax County. Our shelter's in an undisclosed location, but it too is in Fairfax County. And we want to expand. But that every time you buy a house in the greater Washington, D.C. metropolitan area that's big enough to house multiple families, you're spending $1 million plus. And so it takes a lot not only to run the organization that you're running, because everything's more expensive here than everywhere else. But also, if we want to expand, we definitely need the financial resources to be able to do that. Unless people out there want to give us a house, I'll take it. If you got real estate, if you got houses laying around, we'll renovate them. They can be fixer uppers, send them our way. But another thing is volunteerism. There are lots of ways that you can volunteer, not just for Bethany House, but for other organizations. And it doesn't have to be on site. The pandemic has opened up a lot of doors also for people to volunteer remotely. So there are social media volunteers that we have. We have people who help, like I said, do Zoom resume sessions with women. We have people who cook. We have chefs that come and bring food. There's so many ways that you can get involved. Don't think that your talent or your skill or your ability can't be used, because you would be amazed at the kinds of services that we need. We have contractors that we have on call that we say, can you come and, fix a shingle? And that's a way that they volunteer. So you just never know. If you're open to it, offer your skills and your services. And finally, I'm a Christian. It's a Christian organization. If you pray for us. Pray for our safety, pray for the women and the children who come to us, pray for abundance and our ability to reach as many people as possible. Because, like I said, this is a pandemic in and of itself, domestic violence. And no one should have to live in fear. No one should have to live in isolation. No one should have to live, worrying what's going to happen to them at any given second. And we want to really work toward eliminating this plague pandemic, one family at a time. We really do.
That was so eloquently said. And thank you, Tiffany, for, sharing some of your time with us today, with our audience. And like I said, anyone here in the Northern Virginia area that can, volunteer their time and services to such an excellent cause, feel free to reach out. And if you're asking how you can reach out, Tiffany, I'm going to allow you a few seconds to go ahead. Please share, your social media information, your web information, so those who are watching and listening can go ahead and reach out and, give up some of their time and their service to Bethany House.
Okay, I had to turn my mic off because I've got
Don't worry about
fiery dog over there.
It's okay.
You can visit our website at bhnv.org. That's Bethany House, Northern Virginia, bhnv.org. We are everywhere on social media, at Bethany House NV on Instagram, at Bethany House NV on Twitter, at Bethany House NV on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel. We're on LinkedIn. Anywhere that you might think we might be. I just started the TikTok. I haven't made a video yet, but we're on TikTok. You can follow us in any of those spaces. If you go to our website, you can find us, all of our social media platforms and all of the ways to communicate with us. You can find it on our website as well.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. Another great episode talking and discussing a very sensitive topic that, like I said in the beginning, that sometimes gets overlooked. And I'm glad I had the opportunity today to have this serious talk with our great guests, who really help to educate us, like we always talk about here on our platform, educate, empower, and impact, so that, now you have the knowledge to empower you to do something positive and go out and help Bethany House and support their programs that they're doing here, not just in the Northern Virginia area, because like you said, they are cross jurisdictions. They can help and assist across the entire spectrum. So keep that in mind. If you are, like I said, someone who's dealing with domestic violence abuse, or you are familiar with someone who is struggling to get out of a situation. So with that being said, we're going to close out today's episode. You can follow Two Mics Up online at www.twomicsup.com. You can follow us across IG, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Two Mics Up. And if you're watching this today on YouTube, make sure you go ahead and you hit that subscribe button. Go ahead over there to that little top right, hit that bell so you can be notified by all the newest content coming to you from Two Mics Up. And if you really feel this, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, thumbs down. Leave me a comment. Let us know what you really feel. Let us know how we're doing. I like, take on a little, constructive criticism is fine. I'm all for it. Want to know that, you're enjoying what you're not enjoying coming from Two Mics Up. And like we always do at this time, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay blessed. Mics out.